Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Karr-Petras, and I'm back again with Quilters Newsletter's art director, Susan Geddes. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Mary Kate.
I have a confession to make. This was an episode that the idea for which I came up with. And then I threw Susan under the bus and said, you get to make this happen. When we're drafting patterns, we often, when we have template patterns, it's up to the editors to draw the artwork that we want the art directors to replicate. Right. And it's not uncommon for some of us to draw template shapes with seam allowances that come back different from the artists. Both Kath, our senior designer, and Susan, you guys are great at figuring out where to, those corners on, say, sharp angles, right, triangles, where people are going to want to trim those corners so that those patches line up perfectly. And what I've learned by watching you guys is that it's not a science. There's no formula for it. It's just figuring it out. Right. And so we thought maybe for people who design their own blocks, which a lot of people do, whether on graph paper or software, right, it's one thing to draw it, it's another thing to make it happen in real life. Right. So hence, this is why I am so happy you're here to talk about this, because to kind of guide us through what may not seem intuitive until you actually start working with your materials, as it turns out. Okay. So I will throw it to you now.
Okay. So when you draw something on graph paper or in a software program, you draw the finished shape without the seam allowance.
Right.
Okay. Of course, then when you go to translate that into fabric, you've got to add a seam allowance. And when you have angles or curves, not so easily done. So I'm going to give you a quick lesson in how to add your seam allowances and then cut the corners on angles so that when you have cut that fabric out, your patches match perfectly. Otherwise, if you leave those pokey ends there, you're not sure where to mate those two pieces of fabric up. So this is a very simple, basic first attempt at making templates, but it'll work every time, no matter how crazy the shape.
Okay.
Okay. So, sewed up this block for you called Garden of Eden, and we'll make it available on our website if you like. This block has 2 patches that are rotary cuttable, and 1 patch, the C patch, that is not rotary cuttable. And that is because it is a size that can't put that size on the rotary ruler.
And these are the C patches here, right? These ones that are on point.
Yep, these guys on point, which, made up with a triangle, those are usually the ones you're going to have an odd size with. Okay, and truly, before there were rotary rulers and all those great things, our ancestors did everything with templates.
Right.
So, okay, so we're going to provide you with these templates, but I'm just going to tell you real quick. So we're going to start by drawing these on template plastic. And first you would draw your sewing line, which is, in this case, is the dashed line. And then you would draw your other sewing line on your other patch. Then what you want to do is add a 1/4 inch seam allowance around all the patches. Okay, so once you've done that, you're going to cut these out.
So we haven't trimmed any corners yet.
We have not done that yet.
We're not worrying about that.
We've got these 2 patches, and the reason we're going to cut corners, I'll show you, is that here's my C patch. And here are my B patches that I cut out using the rotary measurement. Well, so how do you know where these 2 go together? You could try creasing your patches. This is our C patch. Then we can crease our B patch.
And using those center lines as a way to line them up, which I've done, and it works okay, but As you know, things can shift.
Things can shift, and
And
as you
those
get
folds can be hard to see.
right, and as you get to more complicated shapes, this doesn't always work.
No.
Okay, so what we're going to do is take our templates, our C template, our square. We're going to put it down here, face up. We're going to take our B template, which is our triangle. We're going to put it on top of the C, face down. So
As if we were joining them in real fabric, in real life.
exactly. So right sides together, where this edge, the cut edge of the C patch meets the edge of the B patch, I'm going to draw a red line. And I'm only drawing it in red so you can see the difference. Okay?
And you would have lined those up, centered them,
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Made sure that was right on. Okay.
And you always want to line up the stitching line, not the cutting line. The stitching line in our case here is a dashed line. You can make it a different color if you want, but it's always the stitching lines that you line up.
That's a great point. Because once you've got the patches cut out, if you're using rotary cutter, we're not marking our stitching lines these days.
Right.
So
We're just using our machine's
Yeah.
feet to give us a 1/4 inch. Okay, so we've got these little red lines. We're going to cut them off so that when we cut our fabric templates, our fabric from our template, we will also cut that piece of fabric off. So no matter how you do this, if you cut your fabric with scissors or if you cut your fabric and templates with rotary cutters.
because this triangle started out as a rotary cut patch.
This one did, yes. Not all of them are, but this one did. But it's mating up with a C patch that's not rotary cuttable. So you've got to know where to put the edges. Okay,
And
so
it doesn't necessarily look intuitive, that angle, when you're just looking at the
Right.
triangle all on its own, those angles don't make sense until you see it in relation to the patch it's going to be joined to.
right, and that's the most important thing. When you do these, make sure you're putting right sides of the templates together. So a good idea is to write the name of the pattern on there so that when you're putting this guy on top of this guy, you can see you've got right sides together because you can't read this one. So that's the trick. Okay, so we've cut our swell little patch and then we've just sewn them together.
No dog ears to contend with?
No dog ears to contend with. They meet exactly where they're supposed to, and then when you go to put the next batch on, you will end up with a perfect square that fits that block.
And if you had a triangle or a shape, a patch that needed to meet up in a couple of ways, maybe one corner needed to abut a couple of patches, you just play with it.
Same method.
Same method. You mark your lines before you
Right.
cut anything.
Right.
And again, I've seen you and Kath with, usually you're using paper.
Right.
When you're folding and you're finagling and
Folding, stapling, pinning. Lots of times we use paper, just to make sure we've got it going in the right direction. Occasionally we will even sew a patch just to make sure it really does come together. But yes, no matter how complicated those shapes are, if you use this method where you take the template plastic, put the right sides together, align the stitching lines, and then mark where they overlap, and then cut those off, you'll have perfect templates every time. I'll show you one more trick. If you're using templates that you don't have to cut them all out by hand, you can do things like take your C template, the C template to the back of this rotary ruler.
which it looks because it's a square, it looks like it should be a rotary cut shape, but it's not a measurement any of us want to try to find.
Correct.
So,
But by taping this paper shape on, we can still use the rotary cutter and ruler and get some efficiency there.
Yes.
So you just tape that on, line the left edge up with the edge of your fabric, and then use your rotary cutter to cut this strip. Once this strip is cut, you can just turn the ruler with the taped shape on it and cut this way. So you'll end up with the patch that you need, the size that you need, which is not a rotary measurement, but you've used those tools to hasten your process.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
great tips. And again, thank you so much for stepping up after I said, I think we should talk about this. Susan, would you do this, please?
well, it's great stuff to know, and
And one of these days, I will get the hang of it. I promise, before I hand in another pattern with my
there you go.
seam allowances drawn incorrectly. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years.